Joining us now, Lanny Davis, former White House special counsel to former President Clinton, author of the book Crisis Tales, and a friend of this program. Lanny, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Brian. I still want another redo with Mr. DeGeneva. I think that was a very entertaining time period on a different topic because he's wrong about everything. You can pick any topic.
Yeah, all right.
We'll take you up on that.
We'll take you up on that.
But he's a great American, so, that's okay.
All right. So I want to tell you a story. It's about the Apple Corporation. Apple Corporation, very successful corporation, but occasionally even they have mistakes. They came out with a map program for their iPhone that was an unmitigated disaster. Had people driving into rivers, all kinds of problems. I mean, it was a mess. You know what happened in that particular case? The guy responsible for it was fired. Yet, in government, we never fire anybody when mistakes are made. We've got the rollout of the Obamacare website. Everybody agrees. Even the president agrees. It's an unmitigated disaster. And yet no one, it seems, is going to be fired for this. Why don't we fire people when they make mistakes as government employees?
Well, I think it's a valid point, but really what I wanted to do this morning is tell you how to fix this problem. Because
I'll let you get to that, but hold on.
You can fire people, but it's not going to fix the problem. So that's
but shouldn't someone be held responsible? I think this is what drives a lot of people crazy. In the real world, people get fired when they screwed up. So why is it that nobody ever gets fired, especially in this administration? I mean, look at Benghazi. Look at Fast and Furious. Look at all of these scandals where things have gone wrong, and no one is ever held accountable for those actions.
Well, I wouldn't agree that Benghazi, there were people held accountable. The Secretary of State took responsibility for the whole thing, and that's a whole other subject. But do you mind if I use your Apple example as my example of why there is an easy solution, was an easy solution, and still is to solve this whole problem?
Okay.
We'll make a little news today. So there are several, give credit to Secretary Sebelius for issuing a regulation allowing private sector websites to sign people up under Obamacare, even though there are a lot of people opposed to letting the private sector do anything because they think only government can do everything. So Secretary Sebelius resisted that ideology. She issued a regulation that's kept secret in Washington. Even the president doesn't mention it. In March of 2012, saying the private sector can help sign people up if there's a glitch on government websites. And they reinvented the wheel, even though the client that I have, full disclosure, eHealth, if you Google health insurance, eHealth comes up. They signed up 3 million people without the individual mandate. 40% of them never had health insurance before in their lives. They're a website for 13 years. They've gotten all the glitches taken care of. It's easy. You can use it, and they can solve the problem while government's trying to fix their new software that they reinvented the wheel and spent billions to develop.
Lanny,
would you please tell me why they're not being asked to help solve the problem?
Good question. It's a great point, Lanny, and I embrace it wholeheartedly because you're sort of playing into, if I may say, Republicans and conservatives' solutions for the healthcare problems in America, which is the government messes it up, get the government out of it, and allow great companies like eHealth or allow other companies to come in and use private sector solutions. So it sounds to me like we're on the same panel.
We're on the same page.
You agree we should repeal the Affordable Care Act and get the government out.
So the Clinton way of expressing that is you need government and private sector as a partner. So I'm calling out this morning Governor Martin O'Malley, who endorsed the concept of government-private partnerships, endorsed having these web-based brokers, not just eHealth, but several others, who the federal government signed up but hasn't used yet. Martin O'Malley refuses, after endorsing it, to tell his Secretary of Health, sign these people up. So this morning, I'm calling him out.
All right.
I'm a supporter of his. Why are you not signing up eHealth and the other web-based brokers to give you expanded capacity, by the way, without cost to government?
Wouldn't cost a darn thing,
nickel to government.
We will send that to his people, Lanny, and thanks for that. Let me ask you this, because again, you're a crisis management expert. You were in a White House that was having some issues at various times, and there's one common thread here that we're seeing in the Obama administration. You and I talked about this with regard to the White House counsel and the advice she gave the president or didn't give the president when the IRS scandal story came up. They seem to purposely keep this president in the dark about things. Listen to this exchange yesterday, Ed Henry and Jay Carney.
Why wasn't the president told, though? This is his signature achievement. Was he being insulated?
What the president made clear, and he's on the record saying this, I think, well ahead of the launch, is that we expected hiccups and glitches, as you would expect from the launch of any major complex website.
Yeah, that's Jay Carney's, pat answer here. But the facts are that the people at HHS, they knew this website had major problems, and the president didn't learn about it until a couple of days after the launch. You remember the first day he said, this is just because of the traffic.
And the volume.
Why do they not tell this president that there are problems? Is it to keep him in the dark so that he can deny he had any involvement?
I always assume people have correct motives, whether it's Republican White Houses or Democrat. I think probably they weren't aware it was this serious, although they have plenty of warning signs. But I think the president and Secretary Sebelius, to their credit, allowed the issuance of a regulation that the private sector is allowed to help. What they haven't done is picked up the phone and asked for help. I hope
we keep hearing that there's a tech surge underway.
Listen to your program, maybe I can tell them, call and ask these web brokers in the private sector, we need your help. Come to the White House. I want to meet with you. Help us.
We appreciate you floating that solution,
right,
Lanny, but we do want to talk about this White House is broken, and they're not responding properly. You just pointed out another way why they're not responding properly.
They ought to get on top of this up to a certain point. You don't expect the president to be in the weeds. But now it's time for him to get his hands on this thing, like Lyndon Johnson. You can imagine if it was President Johnson. I know President Clinton would have had his hands on this thing, and now it's President Obama's turn. Get his hands on, bring in the HHS people and say, we have a solution in the private sector. Will you please tell me, without costing the taxpayers, why you haven't called them in? People have been signing people up for years on the Internet.
I'll tell you why, because they're stubborn. They're stubborn, and they don't want to admit that they did something wrong.
And in the meantime,
I think I've heard indications they recognize the private sector. I think the real problem is there are people in the HHS bureaucracy that don't want to use private sector to help. They reinvented the wheel by creating these new websites when they could have used the private sector websites that were already working. Now it's not too late. And again, Governor O'Malley, if you're listening,
okay,
all right, point made. We got it. Got to go, Lanny. Thank you very much.
You have a